Phillip Stutts is joining us, Win Big Media founder and CEO and author, as well as got a book out called The Undefeated Marketing System, How to Grow Your Business and Build Your Audience Using the Secret Formula that elects presidents. And he's worked on many different campaigns, over 1,200 election victories, House, Senate, presidential campaigns as well. Good to see you again, Phillip.
Yeah, good to see you, Adam.
Well, let's talk. And also we have you're an expert on school reform and school choice and all that, which is something I'm passionate about, ironically, because I don't really care about my own kids' education. But I do love the brown and black babies. So I'm here to help. So let's talk about what maybe the politicians know that we don't know as far as campaigns go.
Yeah, you know, and what I put in the book was more of a historical view of how political campaigns have been run since 2000 and how sort of the innovation that has come out of there, because we have elections every 2 years and we either win or we're gone, has really transformed the business world. And so this is sort of a historical look at how political campaigns are run, how George W. Bush won, Obama won, Trump won, and then Biden won. And the formula that they used to win, and then how billion-dollar companies are now utilizing this formula to grow their businesses. And really, the whole point of why I tried to write it was that most businesses don't understand how complicated marketing is today in their business. And the game is just totally rigged against them. It's like Facebook and Google and Coke and all these companies, they're actually just big data companies now. And so the whole key to the whole thing is how political campaigns are using data to, I guess, persuade voters, and how companies should be doing that to persuade customers or clients.
Well, I guess what's the difference between a vote and a taco? You know, either way, you're just kind of
vote with your wallet.
Selling. You're just selling a unit.
It's probably infinitely harder to get somebody to vote for an unknown or unsavory candidate than it is to buy a taco, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I think that the way that we're utilizing sort of political marketing strategies in businesses has an advantage for those companies. And I wanted to tell that story, and I laid it all out in the book.
Well, that's funny, Phillip. I was thinking about your book, and I was thinking about the recent, it's funny you mentioned since 2000, because each of those candidates you mentioned, maybe to a lesser extent Biden, but like Bush, Obama, and Trump had like major hurdles to overcome in terms of marketing. Like you had to market them in a specific way, because people forget Bush was looked at the time as like a buffoon, right? He was like the not quite Jeb. And then Barack Hussein Obama, no one knew who he was. His middle name was Hussein. And then Trump, had a bunch of baggage too. And it's like all those guys had to be marketed in a specific way. Was there some common thread of how that could put them over the top?
Yeah, it started really out of the 2000 campaign. So I was on the Florida recount team, and it was a brutal experience. I think Bush won by 537 votes out of almost 6 million cast in the state of Florida in 2000. Everybody thinks like the last two elections were close. Well, that was decided by 537 votes, the presidency. And so after that, Bush's team got around and said, we got to change everything. And what they ended up doing was bringing consumer data into the whole targeting process of the way they targeted voters. This is a little inside baseball, but it's kind of fascinating. And so for the first time ever, we utilized an extensive amount of data in the 2004 reelection campaign. It had never been done on any political campaign in the history of American politics. And they utilized it to persuade voters on what they cared about the most. We found out through that data what the voters cared about, Brian. Mm-hmm. And in a way, we were able to deliver messages only to those voters and only to those issues. And then in 2008, Obama took that model. He literally, stole it, took it, not in a bad way. He just modeled it. Sure. And then he added in the social media layer to it, right? And 2012, he put that on steroids and won re-election. And then Trump took the data model we had in 2004, married all the social media aspect to it, and then had the incredible branding campaign of Make America Great Again. And this is the craziest one. So Biden is a complete outlier, but he still followed this 5-step system I lay out in the book. But they found out from the voters in 2020 that that Trump was kind of burying himself by going on TV and talking about the coronavirus every day in his press conferences. They knew that if they didn't engage with Trump on a daily basis, the Biden people did, that ultimately Trump would just wear himself out. That if Biden got in a fight with Trump, that Biden was going to lose because Trump wears everybody out. I mean, he just wears everybody out. And so they said, you know what, we're going to hide him in the basement. I mean, everybody laughed at it, right? But that was their strategy, was like, just keep him out, let Trump kind of be out there talking, yelling and screaming at everybody, wear himself out with the voters, and then have Biden come in the fall and be the calm alternative. And ultimately, in all the post-election polls, that's exactly what happened. Well, the Biden team knew that before the election. And the one last thing, though, the Trump team was also following this 5-step system. And if you think about it, I think it was something like 45,000 votes decided this whole election between 3 states, Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin. And if you just had, I think actually it's 42,000 plus votes. So if you just had 21,000 plus Biden voters on election day at the last second switch their vote in those 3 states, Trump would be president right now. So that's how close it was.
Quick question about that, because it's interesting what you said about Biden and sort of staying out of the way. I seem to remember when Trump was elected, that was Hillary's strategy to sort of let him do that. And yet it ended up just clearing a way for him to win. She didn't get as much in his face publicly. She just sort of sat back. How come that didn't work for her?
No, I mean, we were on that race, so I can tell you that their team was engaged very heavily. She was not sitting back. She was trying to take the fight to him. And because in the data, now, of course, I'm going to get canceled for this, but in the data, it said, that she as a woman needed to fight back against the man. And so that's why she did fight back so hard on Trump. So
that's interesting.
I saw it
no, absolutely. Because when you hear people talk about it in retrospect, what I have heard is she should have been more engaged. They assumed he was just going to be some reality star and he'd fade out himself. And I'm thinking, that's interesting, because that would have been a different strategy, but maybe it wasn't like that in the moment.
Gina, let the man handle the interview. Brian, did you have a follow-up to your first?
He wants to know what his favorite ice cream is.
Sorry.
No, I mean, my thing is, like, what did she didn't have a real big campaign theme, right?
Right.
It was just kind of beat Trump, where Trump had Make America Great Again. And so ultimately they knew that brand was 1,000 times more effective than whatever it is
girl
Hillary
power
was talking.
Well, is this a fair statement? Hillary didn't really have a platform per se. And we didn't know who Trump was exactly. Then after 4 years of Trump, Biden didn't need a platform either. His platform was no more Trump.
Right.
Correct. So Hillary, if she had the luxury of us knowing who Trump was for 4 years, probably could have ran on a non sort of platform campaign that was a little opaque and we didn't really sure what she was, because Biden is just not Trump. Right. That's what he ran on.
Strength.
And
that's
also
exactly what he ran on.
If Trump's just going to put himself out there and he knows, Biden must know 82% of the media hates Trump and he's just going to go out in front of the media, then let the media take him apart. Right. You can just hang out and let the media do its work.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is the Trump people were, again, following their formula all the way through. And Trump ended up getting, I don't have the numbers, but it's like 12, 15 million more votes than he did the first time, which is totally insane. That never happens, especially someone that is as polarizing as he is. And so my point in the whole thing is businesses should be following these kind of strategies, because you know what? The same people that we use this in this marketing system in politics, but sports teams use it to win championships. I mean, it's literally a 5-step process that every football team in America follows to try to win a championship. And there are just no businesses out there right now that are following it. And so I'm trying to kind of bring that into that.
Well, what are the 5 steps?
All right. So first step is, on the voter side, how about I walk through how it works on the political side, and then we can kind of make the correlation. So if I sit down with a candidate running for the United States Senate, actually, as a good example, I'm on Dr. Drew's show today, and he makes himself the candidate in the show. So if you want to go hear that podcast, it's pretty interesting. But let's say you want to run for governor of California. Let's just say it's an agnostic state. I know it's not. But the first thing I'm going to do is sit down with that candidate and ask them what they believe in. They always give me like 20 things they want to run on. And I'm like, okay, no one really wants to hear your 20 things. But what I do is I go out and take a survey. It's much more sophisticated than that. But for brevity's sake, we go out and take a poll in the state, figure out of those 20 issues, what rise to such a level that you could get that candidate elected. And ultimately, it's like one or two issues. But what you're trying to do is get an understanding of the voter and what they care about and where they have alignment with the candidate. And this is the same thing that we do, we do in business with customers, right? My thing is this: you have to understand what the voter cares about before you run out and talk about what you want to talk about. But it has to be in an alignment with the candidate. And then the second step is, now that you got it, you got to build a strategic plan. The third step is, now that you have the data and you've got a plan, you build your brand. Like a lot of politicians that don't follow this particular system, they'll run out, put a bunch of ads up, send voters to their website, and the website doesn't speak to the voter. I mean, you don't spend any money or send voters to a particular brand, like a website of the candidate, if it's not going to speak to the voter. So you must get the brand in place before you go out and spend a lot of money. The fourth step, and this is the fascinating one, so I think you guys will find this interesting. The fourth step is you do low-cost testing of the message, those two messages we just talked about. So for example, in the 2016 election, Trump's marketing team would run one ad 162 different ways, like on Facebook, because back then Facebook was the Wild West. And when I say 162 ways, it'd be one message of one ad, and they would literally have a green background, a red background, a blue background, different font sizes, have a man in the ad, have a woman in the ad. They would have 162 versions, and ultimately 8 or 9 of those would blow through the roof, and they really didn't know why. It just blew through the roof as far as engagement, persuasion, fundraising, all of those factors. And then the fifth step is, now that they've tested all of these messages, this one message 162 ways, they're ready to kind of launch out their marketing campaign. They've eliminated all the risk, and they're ready to spend their money and have an ROI in return. So obviously you can correlate how that works in business and sports teams. Sorry, so you'll appreciate this, I guess, Adam, because you like football so much. But if the Rams are playing the Raiders on Sunday, and then the next week the Rams are playing the Packers, the first thing they do on Monday when they come back to the facility is they're going to watch game tape. So they're going to find out what the data says about how they played in the past, and they're going to look at the game tape of the Packers for the future, right? They're going to get the data in place, and then the coaches are going to put a game plan in place, which is step 2. Step 3 is the owners of the stadium are going to clean the stadium, wash the jerseys, get the brand on point for the week so that they can have a game that week that looks professional. All week long. Step 4, they practice the plays in the game plan, right? They're testing their plays out. And then step 5 is, now that they know the tendencies, the plays that'll work, the plays that probably won't work from practice, they go out and play the game. They launch, out, which is step 5. And then I started looking at this. I mean, lawyers do it to win cases. Doctors use it to heal patients. It's like a ubiquitous system that's in place, except in the business world, they aren't following this. And so many business owners right now are totally confused about, I run Facebook ads, I can't get any ROI, and they're just not following a risk-eliminated systematic approach to their marketing.
Could you get Dr. Drew elected governor of California?
I don't. So I got a call from Garagos a couple of weeks ago.
It's always how it starts.
Yeah, you got a call from Garagos.
But could I? I could get him definitely in a competitive game, but he's got things that he's going to have to overcome. And frankly, you end up really thick skin to run for office. So
what does he have to overcome?
My question back to you is, how thick is his skin? And because the hit he took this week on this homeless commission board is nothing to what would be done to him if he ran for office.
I would say thick skin, soft heart.
Yeah.
So depending on how that's balanced.
That's nice.
He doesn't have particularly thick skin. He's actually sort of hairless. I mean, technically, if we're talking about his skin.
Right.
I'm assuming you haven't focused group or group tested Drew's electability, but if you were to, what would he have to overcome?
Well, the first thing I do,
spots, I guess.
Yeah, the weak spot. Let me go to the strong spots, and I'll go to the weak spots. So the strong spots are, I'd probably go out and figure out what is it going to take for him to get 50 plus 1 of the vote, right? He only needs a little over 50%. You can piss off 49.9% of the marketplace. Doesn't matter. And so what are those issues that are driving the people the most crazy right now that they would vote for Drew despite any deficiencies he has out there? And frankly, it's probably around the coronavirus response. And it might be even his homeless advocacy, because it shows that he cares and it's something they're kind of interested in. And so if I was to guess without looking at data, I would say, okay, those are your two issues. Those are going to run. And so in order to combat those deficiencies, you're going to show how much he cares about the homeless population. He's got solutions to fix that, all that thing. And so any voter that comes to his brand is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm pissed off about the lockdowns and the way that Gavin Newsom has corroded our economy and everything over the last year. And you know what? We have a horrible homeless situation in San Francisco and in LA and in San Diego and everywhere else. And this guy wants to fix it. Now, what would be his issues? Well, it'd be he's been on the radio or on a podcast or on TV for like 30 straight, or maybe even like 40 straight years. And I promise you, anybody that runs against him, they're going to have a team that will literally analyze anything he said over the last 40 years. And then you could just see the ads right now with the dark music and everything. And it's like Dr. Drew believes in, and it's X, Y, and Z. And it's going to be his voice doing it. And that's how they come after him.
And anything you've ever said is going to splash onto him, I bet, Adam.
Yeah. And so
that may be good for your brand.
I guess the question is are we sort of post-Trump? Should one lean into this now? Like, it's inevitable. They're going to grab whatever they grab. They're going to kind of whip it up. They're going to do it out of context, and they're going to throw it out there. Yeah. Seems to me it's a bygone era of trying to walk things back.
Right.
I feel like the New World Order is, I don't know, full sort of Bill Maher. Just like, yeah, fuck it. These guys are scoundrels. They take that crap. They mix it up. That's exactly what they want, because they want the status quo. They want to stay in power. They want to run this shit show off a fucking cliff into the ocean, and I'm not that guy. So they can knock themselves out. I want solutions, and I'm going to create them. Like, is it now leaning into this stuff? Because the distancing yourself, the apologizing, I don't feel like it works anymore. Yes. And Trump leaned into everything, and it worked okay at least once.
Stop apologizing. Yeah, I would never apologize again, because, so I don't know if you have this in your notes, but my book cover got banned on Facebook because in my subtitle, it says the secret formula that elects presidents.
It's just a vagina.
And Facebook said I was trying to influence an election after the election. So they banned it, right?
You have a time machine?
And
yeah, really?
Exactly. And what I found out in that process, Fox News did a story on it, and I wrote a big piece in the Federalist about it. But there was a charity out there that approached me and said, we also got banned on Facebook. And I said, why? And they were a charity. I've now, by the way, I'm now donating the first $10,000 of my royalties of this book to this charity. But this charity is helping rescue sexually and physically abused kids from horrible homes. And during the lockdowns, they had more work than they've ever had in the history of their charity. And they raised less money than they've ever raised. So they decided to do a fundraising campaign on Facebook. Facebook deemed them an issues ad campaign and blocked them and banned them from running a fundraising campaign. And so what I tell people is this: in 2018, after Trump won, Facebook came after the political industry and they started banning candidate ads. And everybody went, yay, hooray, they banned those terrible political ads. We love you, Facebook. Thank you. And I said at the time, if they're banning us, they're coming after you next, right? And this goes to the apology side of things. And everybody's like, screw those political ads. Well, now it's starting to affect mine. I don't have a free speech issue. I have an advertising issue. But there are a million other business owners out there right now whose lives, employees, and families depend on running ads on Facebook or Amazon or Google or YouTube or whatever. And because these companies are now getting banned, it's affecting their businesses and potentially taking their businesses out. And then it's now moving to charities. And so the point is that when we don't stand up and when we always apologize for everything, hoping it goes away, it never goes away. And they're always going to come after you next.
Well, a good note to go out on. I will I will confab with Drew and tell him no apologies, because I think that's the new world order. And then the last question is California's supermajority Democrat, but the guy we're recalling is a perfect example of a Democrat who's run the fucking place into the ground. Do we have to elect another Democrat? Is it possible to elect an independent or a Republican?
I have to see. I can't remember if it's a jumbled race or not, or is it a party primaried race? So if it's a jumbled race where everybody's running, including Gavin Newsom, then you could say, like, as a political person, I'd be like, okay, what number do we need to get to win the whole race? It could be 17%. It could be 20%.
Right.
And then you'd have to build out that coalition. So that can happen. I just don't know if it's party affiliated or not. If it's just Democrats running against Democrats, Republicans running against Republicans, and then there's the general election, yeah, that's impossible.
Is he going to get recalled, do you believe, Gavin Newsom?
The signatures are enough right now. So it feels like it's definitely heading in that direction.
All right. Well,
and then next time we come on, I'll talk to you about education reform.
Please.
Okay. And I do write about it in the book about how we utilized ed reform to beat an African American running for governor in Florida in 2018 and with the white Ron DeSantis. And after all these lockdowns, it's kind of a big deal, not only in education reform, but in the way we've lived our life. And I live in Florida now, so it's kind of a big deal. But yeah, we walk through that in the book as well.
The Undefeated Marketing System. It's available now on Amazon. Phillip Stutts, thanks for joining us again, Phillip.
Yeah, thanks.
Always good to speak to you. And
Good to see you.
always so much more to get into, because the guy's so interesting.